Well, hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Um, I am Jan Jeremias, one of your hosts today. I'm an integrative health and wellness coach and author who works with people and pets to help them overcome health challenges and live healthier lives, to be empowered to live healthier lives. And I'm very excited to be joined on stage once again with my beautiful co-host, collaborator, and friend. And if you didn't see her, she got a wonderful haircut, so she's really beautiful now. So, Mary Jane, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, they can't see me, Jan, because we're on.
I know, but I said if you could see her.
There we go. So they just have to visualize, right? The power of visualization.
That's right.
So thank you, Jan. Yes, and yes, I am Mary Jane or MJ, and I love to work with my fellow entrepreneurs to step into their light, to share their gifts in an authentic way, and really helping them to find their voice and helping them to create visuals that are really aligned with their mission. And as always, I am pleased and welcome to all of you here, to be with you here. And of course, with Jan, who shines brightly. I'm going to say she's shining as bright as the sun is here today. And in her profile picture on screen, she's wearing a yellow shade. So she's like the sunshine. So welcome, everyone. And we look forward to having a great conversation, as always, with all of you. So thank you for being here.
Yes, yes. Mary Jane, did you want to share our poem for today?
I will definitely do that. Just bear with me one moment as I switch screens. So, the poem today is by John Rodell and it's called Become, Become, Become. So, it's quite an interesting, it's like having a conversation with God. So, it reads as this. So, me, hey, God. God says, hello. Me, I'm falling apart. Can you put me back together? God says, I'd rather not. Why? Because you aren't a puzzle. What about all the pieces of my life that are falling down onto the ground? Let them stay there for a while. They fell off for a reason. Take some time and decide if you need any of those pieces back. You don't understand. I'm breaking down. No, you don't understand. You're breaking through. What you're feeling are just growing pains. You are shedding the things and the people in your life that are holding you back. You aren't falling apart. You're falling into place. Relax. Take some deep breaths and allow those things you don't need anymore to fall off of you. Quit holding on to the pieces that don't fit you anymore. Let them fall off. Let them go. Once I start doing that, what will be left of me? Only the very best pieces of you. I'm scared of changing. I keep telling you, you aren't changing. You're becoming. Becoming who? Becoming who I created you to be. A person of light and love and charity and hope and courage and joy and mercy and grace and compassion. I made you for more than the shallow pieces you have decided to adorn yourself with, that you cling to with such greed and fear. Let those things fall off of you. I love you. Don't change. Become. Become. Become who I made you to be. I'm going to keep telling you this until you remember it. Oh, there goes another piece. Yep, let it be. So I'm not broken? Of course not. But you are breaking like the dawn. It's a new day. Become. I needed to take a breath after that. I love this the just the conversation with God. It really struck me. Um, and we often are in that place, aren't we, where we feel that we're not sure where we're headed or who we are sometimes, depending on situations. But that letting it be, letting it go, and becoming. It's a beautiful, beautiful concept.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mary Jane. It's one of my favorites. I have many favorites, I think, poems. So welcome everybody once again, and we're so glad you're here. We welcome you just as you are, wherever you are, and however you're arriving in this moment. Whether your heart feels heavy or open, uncertain or simply curious, know that you belong here. This is a space of reflection, connection, and gentle self-discovery, a space to pause and breathe together. So today we continue the journey we began last week, moving from the tender terrain of grief into the deeper question of who am I now? Often during times of loss and in the time after, the big questions of who I am and why am I here surface. Many of us are navigating change. Perhaps it's change in the world that's left you feeling unmoored. Maybe it's a change in your life, the result of losing someone you love, a job you held close, or a role that once defined you. Sometimes it's a quiet inner shift that causes us to no longer recognize the person we thought we were. And these moments often leave us asking, if I am no longer who I was, then who am I now? So today we opened the door to that question, not to find a perfect answer, but to listen to the deeper truths waiting within, to explore what it means to embrace our authentic being beyond identity, beyond expectation. So take a moment to arrive, let yourself settle. You are not alone. You are seen and you are welcome. Let's begin together. So, this beautiful conversation of who am I? And it reminds me of, um, actually, it was Seamus who I have to thank for having me do this. I don't know how long ago it is now, Seamus, like probably maybe like 3 years ago, where I sat in some sessions with him and Menlena, and that was the question of who am I? And we came up with lists of like, of who I was. And I remember on two sides of the paper, I had a list of like all the roles I've played. I was a daughter, I was, in previous careers, I was a scientist, I was a yoga teacher, and then a series of adjectives that were like, how I would be described, of qualities that I had. And I remember looking at the two lists, writing down the lists, and then waking up, I think it was like the next day, and looking at the lists and realizing to myself, I was so much more than those two lists. And then I just wrote on the top of the paper, I am love. Like that was the thing that like I was like, oh my gosh, like, but I think it was that huge realization of like looking at looking at people or looking at ourselves as much more than we tend to label ourselves as. And I think that, that comes from many things. We have these ideas about ourselves, whether they be put in there by society, family, all these different things. But I think we tend to identify ourselves in a somewhat limited and very sort of compartmentalized way. And we have to realize that we're so much more. Mary Jane?
Yeah, it's so true, Jen, what you're saying. I was thinking as you were saying, it's like if there's the labels that we put on ourselves or the ones that we perceive for ourselves, and whether we created them ourselves or they were influencing. And then there's the labels that people outside of us put on us, which may or may not be accurate. So it's quite an interesting perspective to just really just like, well, without all of those things, who am I? Who am I at my core? What
Mhm.
is it that moves me forward? What is my mission and vision or purpose, whatever terminology you want to use in this life? And so it's interesting. It's like, really reflecting on the things that I'm passionate about right deep down in my being. What are those things that light me up? It's just such a beautiful um, and worthwhile exercise to see. And what a lovely thing to wake up in the morning and look at these lists, the list that you had made, Jen, and just write, I am love. How beautiful is that?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was really this, really, I remember being very struck. I think that, through the years, I mean, I know in my personal life and my circumstances, I think we all tend to label ourselves in a particular way. And then it is those times when all of a sudden, our life is shaken up. And then we question like who we are. And I think those are when you realize who you are, right? Because then you realize that whole poem that when things fall away, who am I now?
Mm.
As you feel like, like everything around you is falling off basically, or your world is kind of shaken up, and you're like, and that's when you have to look deeper. And that's what I think everybody is, right? Everybody is really, you know, love or, you know, divine energy.
Yes.
Shame.
Yeah, thanks, Jan. And again, yeah, I thank you so much for bringing back that recollection as well of the work we had done together. Like, and again, like everyone's journey, every day is a learning day, and we've learned so much, I think, from each other in in the pursuing years as well, and continuing to learn up to today, even through through forums like this, through forums like we're doing with Michael as well, through and other areas. Like every day is a learning day, basically. So thank you, Jan, for that. What was coming to mind straight away was the whole idea of
Seamus, did you mute yourself intentionally?
Yeah.
sorry guys, I'm not, did that just happen? I'm not sure, my PC must be doing something funny here.
Yes.
But
It muted you.
yeah, no problem. That wasn't like what I'm saying. But yeah, it's the whole idea of identity. And we assume these identities and we own these identities that we create. And I expect that book, Jan, that you recommended to me like a couple of months ago. I'm making my way again through it. Like it's such a beautiful book from Jack Hornfield about the wise heart. And he talks about this exact thing. He talks about identity and holding lightly, basically, to the identities and the different personas. And I was even talking to a client about this during the week about, we show up on the outside world with an assumed identity, and it takes, there's so much power in that. The ego is fed from these identities of being the businessman, the who knows what to do, who's strong and able for anything and puts on a brave face. And we get lost in that identity. And it was a great learning for me in that book is to remember to hold lightly to these identities and to really make sure that we maintain a solid connection through our true essence, which is the core of my own work as well. And over years of realizing my own true value and the transience of these very superficial and limited identities we take on that we allow to become so important. There's great power in actually seeing those identities what they are and to actually challenge them and maybe not respect them as much as we might have done when we're giving too much of our own authentic power away through those identities. So again, it's like the power of that permanent connection foundation to who we truly are, like the roots of the tree. Every person in the world, I believe, has their true essence. Every person has a true essence. And a lot of the time it's getting hidden by the persona or the transient identity that we allow to take hold, basically, and overpowers, I suppose, really our true essence and our true identity. And it comes back to Jack Hornfield, I think, around realizing the power of your true essence. And when you assume these different personas, which we all do need to do to show up in an external busy world, to never allow ourselves to become disconnected from that true essence. So it's always there as a solid anchor, basically, the stillness and the power and the space of allowing that true essence to shine through the transient situations and the transient personas we take on in an externally busy world. And I suppose the last thing I would say is it just reminded me of a quote from Shinru Suzuki that Jack Kornfield talked about, and it kind of sums up perfectly today's theme and the poem. Like, you are perfect just the way you are, and there is always room for improvement. You know what I mean? And I think that's just a beautiful way of summing up, basically valuing who we currently are, but knowing that, it's an ongoing journey and we never stop learning. And every day is a learning day. It brings us back right to what you talked about, about the power of loving ourselves and the power of compassion. And that opens the door to allowing ourselves to kind of accept and love who we currently are and know that there is more evolution and more development and more growth ahead through that compassionate channel, I suppose, to our true essence.
Thank you, Seamus. So beautiful. And a few words that you said really kind of struck me and or just reminded me. And that was like, the word that came to mind was attachment. And so, I think that that's what happens. Like when we attach to a particular identity or role, when we lose that, it really basically rocks our foundation because so much of us is really tied into that identity or role that we have a hard time then, we literally you lose yourself. And it's like you have to rediscover who you are once again. And I think we've all had situations where when you particularly identify very strongly with a particular role or label, that all of a sudden it's like, okay, when that goes away, then what happens? Then you've lost yourself. And then I can think of times in my life where like I questioned it, but then I kind of moved on quite quickly from it. And just because last week was on grief and I've spoken about my dad. And I think that, when my dad passed, there was this feeling of like, oh my gosh, I'm not daddy's little girl anymore, because he wasn't there anymore. And I was daddy's little girl, just so you know. Um, but all of a sudden I realized I was, whether he was here or not, didn't matter. But for that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like who am I now? Like I'm not that little girl anymore. I'm not like I don't have this, he's not going to call me up and, kind of thing. And then all of a sudden I realized, but that didn't change just because he wasn't physically on this, in this plane or on this planet. And so I think that it's how much we attach to that identity, which causes, suffering basically because we get lost. Mary Jane, do you have anything you want to share before we move on to Matthew?
No, it's just such very valid perspectives from Seamus and you as well, of course. But it's just yeah. I mean, that's you even said it. It's like that's I think I talked about it last week when we were talking about grief and the when I was restructured out of my job after 31 years. And, in that grief, it was like that was the question that kept repeating in my mind because, it becomes so much part of the assumed identity of me. It's like, who am I now? It was like a recurring theme in my brain during those days. And it took a while to sort of like work through that process and realize that, I am not my job. I'm not the job that was and reconnecting with who that true essence of who I am, the person that is kind, that leans into empathy and compassion and wants to reconnect people with creativity. That's who I am at my core, and I that took a lot of work to to go through, but it was well worth the journey, and I'm still on the journey of embracing that even more fully. So yeah, I guess, Matthew, what do you have to say today? Welcome back.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I was just thinking, should it be who am I? or should it be what or who can I be?
Mhm.
Because like, will you ever really figure out who you are? And is that going to limit you into a little bit too deep in the reflection process? But when you think about what could I be, it opens up that possibility of forgetting about the shit that fell off. I like the poem, and it's good for people that are kind of caught in the past and thinking, ah, crap, I lost this or that didn't work out or whatever. But when you think about what could I be now, as opposed to who am I?
It's a good point, Matthew. And I think about it in two ways. I like what you shared, but I think really every experience, I mean, to me, every experience that happens to me, like, or happens for me, um, is really a reminder of who I am. It's not like like I've grown and I've changed and kind of thing. But really when you look down at who I am now versus who I was, it's really, when I was a kid or at different points, it's really no different. And every life circumstance is like every hardship, every challenge is really just a reminder to me of who I am. And years ago, I remember, and I use yoga examples all the time. I was sitting in yoga class, and my teacher said, yoga is the practice of remembering. And that struck me. It was just like, and it is. And that's to me what life circumstances are. It's like every relationship is a reminder of who you really are. And I don't know that that really changes. I think it's just it's a revelation. It's like a cleaning of the mirror of who you are, really. So that's just my take on it. But I do love what you shared because I don't feel like you should, I don't want it to be a limitation, but I think it's almost like a clarification, a reclarification.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, and Matthew, it is a valid point. So that's what I was saying in the chat. It's like, there is once you work past the parts of feeling like, why is this happening to me, and realizing no, it's not happening to me, it's happening for me. So, and realizing that there's lessons to be learned. I mean, yeah, there can be some a lot of hope and inspirations, because those stories are the things that make us who we are as well. Um, Not that we have to embody them fully, but they are part of what makes up who we are. And but just really um, learning to grow past or around those things, because you can never fully eliminate them for sure. But just remembering who we are at our core, and whether, after reflection, self-reflection is good too, because sometimes I call it my reality check. Um, just taking those moments of thinking, or as our friend Darlene likes to say, that's curious. So it's true, because sometimes I have a good chuckle at myself, wondering where on earth these things came from. Because sometimes it's not always obvious. So, but yeah, Jen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, like you said, that reflection, but I think also is the interaction and relationship, because often how we see ourselves is not at all how other people see us. And so we filter our stories are interpreted by, obviously our previous experiences and what we became. And so it's kind of like, sit back and, when you hear people like one of the practice of the adjectives to describe myself or whatever, in those sessions with Seamus, and they asked me to go out and talk to five people and ask five people five adjectives they would use to describe me. And so I wrote them all down, and it was it's always really interesting, right? Because how often does somebody say something about you and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, if they really knew me, or like it's almost like with surprise that we feel like we've been described like that. And we need those interactions also. So you need the reflection, but you also need that mirror because often people reveal things to you, which for some reason you can't see at the moment or you're not able to see.
Absolutely. It's so true. I mean, often people can be mirrors for
Often, yes,
for ourselves.
absolutely.
And so reflection and redirection, that's
Yeah. And
that's
often, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a person. It could be Tonka will tell you he's truly a
that.
reflection, a reflection back of me. Sometimes not in a great way. Um, yeah.
I love
Divine.
that. It's like, Mom, you're out of sorts, so I'm going to be out of sorts too. So there.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Exactly. Divine, please, our sister, divine sister.
Hello, rise and shine. I was debating if I wanted to speak today, but because my daughter's here, she's not feeling too well, so I'll be brief as I can be. But I hope you all are doing well. Happy Friday. So, as Jan was speaking, and as Mary Jan was speaking, let me clear my voice. I've been drinking a lot of tea today. I'm looking at the refrigerator, and I'm looking at this paper that my daughter created for Mother's Day for me, right? Thinking about the reflections and the children and how other people perceive us to be, right? In our moments, I want to say, because I really truly believe that we are moment to moment people. And my daughter wrote, "My mom is so sweet and nice and special." And then they did like a little creative artwork with three hearts, and she did my favorite color, which is purple. And then she wrote "Mom" in pink. And there's a flower on there. There's an achievement award on there, and there's another flower, right? And it says, "My mom is pretty as a model. My mom is as silly as a clown, and my mom is as smart as a problem solver." Oh my God. So, just looking at that, it reminded me of the reflection that you guys were talking about. And reflecting on this journey for so long, for years, for 7 years. And when I used to coach people for life purpose coaching, that was one of the questions, who are you? But I had to dive deeper within that course, within that framework, within the past few years. And I haven't done coaching in a while. I'm more into mentorship now with guiding people through my own personal life experience and my own wisdom. But whenever I used to coach people, I used to ask them all the time, who are you? But now I also ask the question, you know, what are you? I think it's important to know both. Maybe that's just the way that my psyche likes to define things. But I think that when you dive deeper into what are you, right? It's like, what am I and who am I? Because what I am is pure energy and love and flow, right? That's the true essence of what I am. It's pure love, energy, and flow. But who I am, that can shift, that can change. Who I am is, it's a choice. It's to choose your identity, it's to choose a role, it's to choose your position, right? And also, I say, what lights you up? What is the spark? What lights you up today, moment to moment, right? And I tell people all the time, we are walking contradictions. The reason why I say that is because we're moment to moment people, right? You may feel one way. I told my daughter yesterday, she's like, "But you promised me you was going to take me to the park." But I already knew that she didn't feel well. I said, "Well, how about you eat something first and see how you feel?" And she had a meltdown because she said, "I promised her." I said, "Listen, honey, mommy did not promise you. Promise is something that also can still be broken. We're allowed to change our mind. We're allowed to have a change of heart. So I'm still teaching my children these things. It's okay to be disappointed, But when we have to make tough calls or make decisions, whether this is family, business, whatever this may be, it's important to look at, are we holding back because we are trying to please or fulfill somebody else's need? Or are we looking at the bigger picture or the whole of what is necessary and what is needed? And maybe that's the role that I play as a mother, right? And when I look at the role that I play as a mother, I can also flip the script in my role. You know, I don't have to be the mother that bends to your will today because I know you don't feel good and I know you need to rest because you want to party on Saturday at that skating ring, don't you? Yes, you do. So maybe you need one day of rest and we could skip out on going skating at the playground for you to party hardy hardy for Saturday at your birthday party, right? We want you to be well rested, So I have to really sit and reflect and a lot of I would say stillness and isolation and reflecting and looking at the bigger picture and the purpose for all parties involved when I have to make decisions because I have to give myself permission to shift and change because that is what I am. If I am pure energy, I am pure love. I can shift. I can change. I can change my mind. I can have a change of heart. I don't have to be set in stone. I can flip the script in my roles that I play. And a lot of times it boggles people's egos. It boggles people's mind because the ego, the mind doesn't like to shift. It doesn't like new things unless you program it into a new program, a new belief, right? That's saying, okay, this is what I am. This is who I am. And I can shift and I can change my mind. And I don't have to play this role anymore. I can flip the script in that role, right? I don't have to be that type of mom anymore. I don't have to be that wife. And right now, I am preparing myself to become a partner, right? To become collaborator with other people. So if I'm doing that, I also have to make sure that I'm preparing myself and choosing what type of role or a partner or wife that I want to be, right? It's not what society told me. It's not what somebody else told me. Oh, this is what a good wife is, or this is what a good mentor is. We get to choose in that script, in that role. So, yeah, this conversation is a lot. Thank you, my loves. I yield it there.
Thank you, Divine. Wonderful share. And so much of what you said, I'm like was writing down little phrases and notes. Um, but yeah, first of all, I love your whole description of your daughter and the gift. And first of all, I think there's nothing like homemade gifts. Like, Mary Jane and I have done that in our like workshops where we've made people gifts for like I think we had a Father's Day and Mother's Day workshop last year. We actually made gifts for people, also for the holidays. And I think there is something about like, when you make something yourself versus, buy something, there's a lot more heart into it, as we know. I mean, I believe anyway. And so that was one thing. And then Mary Jane wrote down in the comments, want a true, honest reflection, ask a child. And I think that is so true. Also, if you want to see who people really are, like, watch them, watch how they are with children or animals. You know, I think it reveals a lot about about the person that they are on a deeper level beyond all the labels and the sort of like the corporate or whatever role they play. Is get them around, either that or maybe the elderly is included in that or just people. So yeah, Mary Jane, did you want to share anything? And then we'll move on to Jason.
Yes, I just wanted to say that there's just such power in these conversations and perspectives because it's like you know as we know and Divine was as she was sharing it came to mind as I put in the chat was that is that challenging and rewriting those well limiting narratives, limiting beliefs, whatever you want to choose to call them, really does allow us to grow. Is the growing process always smooth and peaceful and painless? No, not always, but it's well worth it when we get there.
Mhm. I used to, when I did intentions years ago, it was always like, during those growth things, let them be easeful. It's not necessarily like, I was like, just whatever it is, just let it move out or process through easily. with ease. Jason?
I really love this conversation, all the wisdom and the love around this conversation. And, I wanted to raise my hand earlier and then I just paused to listen and be present. But when Matthew asked the question, um, is it who are we becoming or is it, who I want to be? And I instantly thought of the poem that Mary Jane opened up with. And in the phrase, God was saying, you're becoming who I created you to be. I think that was the language. And I believe that fully, that with the moment we enter this world, we're exactly the person that God created us to be. We are literally our authentic self. And of course, we've got to learn to communicate and adapt, right? When we're feeling frustrated, we scream as babies because we haven't learned how to speak in this world. And we learn not to touch, the oven a second time. We learn to put a coat on when it's cold outside. And that goes to what Divine was saying. Like, who am I in this moment? Or how do I need to be in this moment? Like we get to change and adapt. And as we go through life, we learn, we put these layers on, we put these filters on for that moment. And sometimes we forget that we get to remove those layers and we carry them with us, depending on our experience in that moment. Sometimes that filter or that layer becomes armor and it stays with us for longer than we actually need it. And so, back to Matthew's question, uh, I think it's one and the same. Who am I becoming and who do I want to be? Well, for me, I want to be my authentic self, the person that God created me to be. And who am I becoming by letting go of some of those layers that no longer serve me? And so I just wanted to give my reflection on this wonderful, wonderful, powerful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was absolutely amazing. And I think you hit it right on the sort of like the nail on the head, because that is exactly what I feel the whole concept is, we are born, if you look back, and Mary Jane and I had this with Darlene, we are like chatting with Darlene and Taryn, who many of you know, one day. And it was this idea of like, we looked back at what we do now and how each one of us in some way does something we did as a child that we loved to do, that we absolutely, that was really what lit us up. And we made that as part of our purpose. And maybe I think for most of us, it didn't come directly. It wasn't something we automatically did because of those labels or society or expectations or, you know, whatever it was, we kind of formulated. And maybe it was not necessarily armor, but we became who we thought we needed to be. But we all made our way back in some form. And I think that we are born, you know, with divine presence or whatever, and we're born as exactly how we were meant to be. And we do, based on experiences. And we do have to change, and I'm not saying that. And we learn to navigate the world, by doing certain things to keep ourselves safe and, feeling like we belong, which is a big conversation that we have in our with Seamus and my group with Seamus and Michael Keating and Taryn. It's like, that whole idea of we want to fit in, we want to belong, we want to feel safe. And sometimes we put on those cloaks or those, you know, that armor, those cloaks for those reasons. But yet we have to work our way back and hopefully feel safe enough that we're able to start to remove those layers and then, be who we were meant to be and not, realize that that coat is tattered and worn and we can donate it to a good cause with love. And I think that, I want to say with love because I think that's really important because I think we have to honor the roles we played or the cloaks we put on for safety because they did serve a purpose. But I think we have to, so we surrender them with love. Mary Jane?
Yeah, I love what Seamus popped into the chat about, what brings joy. It's really what it comes down to, returning to that joy that's deep within, the things that we might have perhaps forgotten about or have become buried amongst the layers. And it's just such a can be such a beautiful journey. Sometimes it can be really scary, as I was putting in the chat. But yeah, it's worth the journey, and that's why. Well, I've said it to a few people, but definitely I've said it to, she's not here today, but to Sue on several conversations with her is just like, just take one moment each day if that's all you have. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, a minute, a brief second, whatever it is, just to take those moments and remember the joy, the pure joy that comes from within when we're being our authentic selves. So thank you, Jason, for perspective and Seamus and all that have been in the conversation so far. I love it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Andrea?
Hello. So I love that I come right after Divine and Jason because my sharing ties up to what they just mentioned. So first, um, from my journey also, I learned that actually everything we're talking about here, they're just two sides of the same coin. So for example, what we're saying as the who I am, as the that being that God created us to be, it's actually what I would describe as our divine self, the spirit, the original identity we have, and then we come to Earth with our own human experiences because we're here to learn lessons, right? And those lessons, as we learn them, they get to enrich more and further shine more light into who we truly are as individuals, as individual spirits, and as a collective. And in my personal experience, I wanted to share because mine is maybe a bit unique compared to mainstream because like I was brought up like a monk basically. So I grew up in a spiritual path. So my mom was the reason why I was there, and I was already meditating since I was 6 years old. I was vegetarian. I was doing spiritual study, and then meditating whole day and all that stuff. And part of it is celibacy. I haven't even reached puberty yet, and but I'm being programmed to be to be like a celibate monk my whole life and all that. And throughout my journey, because of some differences, like my parents separated when I was 11 years old, and I took on this identity because that's what's expected by me, of people around me. Like they're always telling me, "Oh, you're such a mature soul. You're such a blah 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 enlightened little one." And so I'm like, okay, that's who I am. Okay, I'm very grounded. I'm very peaceful. And suddenly, like when I was in college, there was just one little thing that happened that really triggered me, and I had a meltdown for 1 hour. So I was like, where did that come from? I've been meditating for like most of my life, and where did all this rage come from? So I realized I was suppressing a lot of emotions. I wasn't letting myself be the child I was when I was still younger, when I was growing up as a monk, because I was expected to be a divine, enlightened being, but I was a child. I didn't let myself be that child and experience my emotions and all that. So, I learned spiritual bypassing by default. I mean, nobody forced me to do it, but I was a people pleaser apparently. So or maybe it's also part of like a survival mechanism for me before. But yeah, so in my journey of becoming, it was actually more becoming more in touch with my body, learning to work more with my body, and acknowledge the emotions and just let it pass through me. And because I learned that also by acknowledging it and letting it pass through me, and honoring it, honoring the gift of the sacredness of these things, like what you mentioned, grief. So my father, when he also passed away like 3 years ago, I wasn't even it was only I was only starting to acknowledge that I was angry when he left, when he died. So it was like I was processing them at the same time, processing the anger, but at the same time, honoring the divinity and the sacredness of the experience, that yes, his physical body is not there anymore. There's a lot of quote unquote regrets, but on the other hand, he he's now with me anytime I want him to be, because he's now part of the bigger essence, this the spirit essence. Yeah. So it's like mixed emotions. But anyway, so it also taught me, like, it also gave me a purpose. Like in the future, I want that as one of my missions, to help um um parents, or also kids going through similar stuff. Anyway, so yeah, so my experience has been like not to treat one journey or the other as better than the other. Like, for example, being highly spiritual, like being detached from the body as something, of a higher purpose. Because in my journey, I also realized the importance of being in touch with your earthly experience and really honoring it, acknowledging it. And that's actually the portal towards, becoming who you truly are in the full essence of your divinity. So, yeah, that's my sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up such a, I mean, to me, this is a very valid, this validity in that we are spiritual beings living in a human body and having a human experience. And I think being all in one area and all in the other, you know, um, we live here on Earth, we all have lives, things or whatever. And so I think there has to be this, but I don't think we can forget either way. And I think it's our disconnection from that spirit part, from that energetic spirit part, which is responsible for, I think, for a lot of, I'm trying to find the right word, for that feeling of disconnection and feeling lost. I think, so I think we need both. And so beautiful. And just when we were talking about, I just wanted to share this story from the Talmud. And in the Talmud, it said, which is the old ancient Jewish sages said, that, in utero, a baby learns everything it needs to learn. And when it's born, the moment it's born, that an angel comes down and touches right below the nose where the indentation is, and they forget. And life is a series of remembering. That's what it is. So just wanted to share that old sort of sacred kind of lineage and belief of, you know, from the Talmud. It's actually from the Talmud sect Nida. And yeah, and they describe that forgetting, and that the whole experience of our lives is a process of remembering. And, we're remembering the divinity that we are. We're remembering the wisdom of the universe, which we know, you know, which we learn while we're being nurtured by our mother in utero.
I love
Mm.
loved it. I loved it how Jason is my moves to say thank you for choosing me. Yeah, that's yeah, that is a blessing for sure. And what a beautiful image that created when you were talking about what the Talmud shared in the wisdom. It was just like, we had everything that we needed to know. We were everything. We were all encompassing. And I love though that now that this is a process of learning or perhaps relearning and remembering what it is that we were or we are, not were, are already. And I love the visual that came to mind just because I'm a visual person. So the thing of just picturing an angel touching and making that little indentation is such a beautiful, beautiful image. And it's true. It's the remembering, and Seamus was pointing about the joy is fine, remembering the joy
Mhm.
that we are.
Absolutely. And when you said, when Jason said, my mom chooses me, I always feel like, I always have said to people, your animals, like, choose you,
Hmm.
and you get the animal you need
Yes,
at that point in your life.
absolutely.
That to be so true.
Hmm.
Um, because I mean, I think if you're open to it, my animals have taught me so much. So I always say they were like, they chose me as much as I chose them because they were all adopted. So all rescues. So Al,
Yeah, I like the topic of the becoming, So basically, becoming is, I have an acronym that I just said it during this conversation when it started, like being expansive, When we started as a small child, I mean, we do not know how to walk. We started crawling as a baby. And from there, we crawl, crawl, crawl. And after when we started to walk on our two legs, we keep on falling. When we keep on falling, we have to go rise up again, And when every time we keep on falling, then we have our courageous to start climbing, When you start climbing the mountain, and then when you reach up the highest mountain, you become outstanding. And once you become ascending, when you're looking from the top of the mountain and from the peak, and you're being magnificent, the M. And after being magnificent, you're coming down to become extraordinary. So we have to put a smile in joy, So joy stands for journey of you. So each day we are facing a lot of circumstances and obstacles, but we always put our joy and a smile in ourselves. Smile stands for seeing miracles in life every day. So seeing miracles in lives every day. So smile, this is what we have to put in our smiles every day. And I also love the word metaphor, metaphor. We always keep on transforming, When the caterpillar is transform and metaphor, it stays in the cocoon, it pauses there, before it becomes a beautiful butterfly. So when it comes out of the cocoon, it struggles its way and it changes its shape and its form and becomes a very beautiful butterfly. So this is a reflection that we have to be, and every day we have to reflect that we can become what we are and becoming what we should be. Thank you.
thank you, Al. So first of all, I want to remind you to type in some of those wonderful acronyms in the comment section of the event because I love them. And I've done that quite a bit. And I think words, and Mary Jane and I have spoken about words a number of times. Words are so powerful. And when we create those kind of like acronyms or meanings behind, like for ourselves behind them, they become even more like valuable and a tool for us to like remind ourselves, talk about remember, to remind ourselves with when we do come across those, when life does throw us those challenges. Andrea, did you want to share something else?
Yes, yes. Sorry, I forgot to share share earlier because I was concerned about not talking too long. Yeah, but based on the journey for me also, I later on realized upon peeling all those layers of what I think people expect me to be. So I learned that I resonate more with family life, and um, really being immersed in the community. So yeah, that's one of the points I wanted to share because it really took me a long time to really unlearn all those things, like, and to have the courage to tell my mom, because they all expected me to be like a nun, like really be a celibate and single and a monk until I become an adult. But I told them no, no, I want to have a family because I feel that's my calling. I can serve and be have a spiritual life even in while having a family, and that's my calling.
Thank you, Andrea. And I love what you said, to unlearn, to learn. And I think that that is so true. I think it was Divine who I heard this with first, this whole idea of reparenting yourself. And I think that there's such great, and not that, I mean, I love my parents. But, I was having this conversation with someone yesterday, and I said, it's really interesting is, I loved my parents, but they came into this world with their own kind of, not in a bad way, agenda, but their own sort of things that they were carrying. And so they came and, and they pass that on, even if it's unintentional. And, for whatever reason, they do that, whether it's their own fears that they've now, passed on to you. But it is this kind of like, and so what do we do as, we have to spend our life, basically spend our lives trying to figure ourselves out, right? Beyond all the labels. And that's a great thing, that we get that opportunity. Their own programming, absolutely. Um, and it reminds me, I mean, from practical things to like, you know, almost unconscious things that they don't even realize that they're doing. Practical meaning like my sister-in-law is terrified, and I mean terrified of dogs, of any animal. It's kind of mind-boggling, that you're considering me, but it's a sister-in-law. But both of my brothers are really not into animals either. But and how did she pass that on to like my nieces and nephews to but that they were terrified of animals. And and so then, then breaking and having to break out of that kind of persona. And funny story is like years later, like, literally my niece would like probably would have close up passed out if she had saw a dog. I mean, she's terrified. And she became a physical therapist. And then one day she called me and she said, Aunt Jan, I'm not scared of dogs anymore. And I said, well, how'd you do it? She said, well, I couldn't tell she was doing home visits. She said, I couldn't tell my boss that I was afraid of dogs, so I couldn't go to that client's house. So all of a sudden she had to get like, she had to let that fear go, not that she loves them, but she definitely cannot, like, she won't cross the street if she sees one anymore. And so, but, I think that even that kind of fear-based or just behavior, not in ill will, but it comes from somewhere. And we kind of have to realize whether that was her to begin with, right? Which it wasn't, that wasn't who she was. It was who her parents put onto her at that moment. So does anybody have, Mary Jane, do you have anything else to share before we move into meditation?
And not 100% anything that I have to share, but I just, as always, I just wanted to say that such wonderful conversations, and I just really love that we can share them in this beautiful community, where we can feel so supported and understood, and it's lovely. We need much more of that in the world for sure. So thank you all.
Absolutely, we need that in the world. So we're going to move into our meditation today. So begin by inviting in stillness. Take a comfortable seat or lie down. Allow your eyes to gently close. Begin to notice your breath. Soft, steady, present. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw relax. Let yourself arrive here fully. Feel the ground beneath you. Allow it to hold you. So think of the word surrender and surrender to it. You are safe here. Each breath brings you deeper into the truth of this moment. And what is that truth? Now imagine yourself standing in front of a mirror, not a mirror of glass, but a mirror of the soul. It reflects not just how you look, but how you feel, how you carry yourself, the patterns you've adopted, the roles you've performed, the stories you've come to believe about who you are. What you've learned to show the world. Notice, what masks are you wearing today? Are you wearing the mask of I'm fine, even when you're not? The mask of the caregiver, the professional, the one who has it all together? The mask of perfection, of control, of who others expect you to be. Take a breath. Feel the weight of these masks. They may have served you, protected you, but they are not you. Visualize removing the masks. And with your next breath, imagine gently reaching up and removing one of those masks. Feel what it's like to set it down. You are not discarding it with anger, but with love. You thank it and you let it go. And again, remove another layer, another identity, another role you've had to play, another expectation that that has been placed upon you. And then again, breathe. Place it down with love and let it go. With each mask you release, feel yourself becoming lighter, closer to something real, closer to you. Meet your authentic self. Now, with all the masks removed, imagine looking into the mirror once again. What do you see now? Maybe it's softer, maybe it's uncertain, but there's clarity too. There's honesty, there's presence. You are here, you are enough, you are not your job, your pain, your past. You are not who the world says you are who you feel yourself to be. Place a hand on your heart. Feel the rhythm, steady, alive, true. Say softly to yourself, I'm returning to myself. I release what is not mine. I trust in who I am becoming. I am enough. Take a deep breath in and exhale slowly. Begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. Gently open your eyes when you're ready and carry this truth, your truth, with you. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure, a joy, and a blessing to have you all here. Wishing you a wonderful week ahead. Take a moment maybe to catch up with each other, and I'd love to catch up with anybody I haven't spoken to in a long time. Or if I have spoken to you, still love to catch up. Have a great week. Mary Jane, and our next workshop is May 24th. And I know for those in the US, it is Memorial Day weekend, but still, if you want to come and, do a little self-care and take care of yourself and get a little creative, we'd love to have you. We'll pop a registration link in the chat. And I'm pet sitting, as you can hear. And so I'm three dogs. I have three dogs barking at the moment.
They
So I'm sorry.
wanted their voices to be heard too.
That's right. They do. They do. They were agreeing after, after we closed the meditation, they were like affirming. So, yeah.
I love it. Yes. And yes. But thank you all for joining us as always, and for bringing your authentic selves here and your willingness to share it with us. So thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great week, everybody.